Welcome back to Worth the Effort Woodworking. Today I am heading to North Texas and we are going to be building a doghouse. A really simple design based on free material I collected by disassembling some pallet wood. And I'm calling this an almost free doghouse simply because the only real expense is going to be the nails I'm putting into it, a little bit of glue, and if I use screws, those. Plus we're going to want to paint it. So it's an almost free doghouse, and because I'm using pallet wood, I'm going to incorporate them into the design, so it's going to be incredibly simple to build. I mean, even if you had just a hand panel saw and a hammer, you should be able to complete this project. Me? Well, a few months ago, I built a knockdown workshop, so I'm bringing a portion of that with me, and this is something that I'm looking forward to being able to do a lot more in the near future whenever I finish a little teardrop camper build. You've seen on the channel I've already got the trailer portion of itself, but it's just taking me a little bit longer to save up to buy the wood to actually build a camper. But that's in the near future. For now, let's head to North Texas. Okay, everybody, this here is Lava, and this is definitely a dog that wants to be outside. Spend his days out on the porch or in the pond, and its nights sleeping out under the sun. So we're going to build her, another treat, little place to stay out of the sun. Now, in my last video, I broke down a bunch of pallets. I'll put a link to that video here. That's the free material we're going to be using. I also held on to 2 identically sized pallets and one that's the same width, but it's a little bit different size. This is going to become a porch. These 2 are going to become the floor and the ceiling. And because I'm using existing pallets, it's going to save me a lot of stress about, having exposed tetanus shots areas, exposed nails, because dog won't be able to reach that area where the nails are going to be. Now, I was lucky when I found these 3 that, they were already solid. You can find them out there like that one. But if you have just a normal pallet, just find an extra one, tear out the slats, and nail it in between them. You might have to rip them down to size a little bit to get it right in there, but it's not hard to do if you can't find solid fronts like this. But the first thing we need to do is make sure we have at least some kind of solid piece of wood on all 4 sides. So these areas where we had the gaps, got to go ahead and put a board over that. Now, those pieces that I wrapped around the bottom, well, they came from, I don't know what you call them, the under pieces of one of the pallets I had. So it's a little bit thicker material than what you normally have on pallets, those 1/2-inch slats. We're going to use those for the exterior, but this thicker stuff, we're going to actually build a easy frame that actually lift the platform up off the ground a little bit, so it'll get a little air circulation and it will dry out when it rains fairly easily. Plus, it's just nicer up a little bit higher for the dogs, I think. They get a better view. So that gives me now 8 boards that I can make 4 legs out of. 2 that'll be long, that'll be for the back, and 2 that'll be short, that'll be for the front. And you'll see why that's important. Right now, I'm just going to run a bead of glue down on one side and make L brackets out of them so that we can slide them around the perimeter and form legs. And I am using Titebond 3 here, so it will be waterproof. But the glue is just kind of reinforcement. So the legs have had overnight to dry. So now I need to just position where I want the doghouse. Because one of the nice things about this particular design is you can put it on unlevel ground. Now I'm going to build it here, but I think my sister's probably going to move it somewhere else. I'm going to position it because, as you saw in the photos, the sun sets right behind that tree right there. And in Texas, you know, you want the wind to be coming in from the cool area and the shade to be coming from the hot areas. So by midday, when temperatures get hot, I want the dog completely in shade if lava wants to be there. So we're going to put the back of the doghouse towards the sun in the evening. So one of the few expenses for my example of this design is just for some pavers to get it off the ground. It'll help prevent it to last longer from rotting, and it'll just give me a little bit more solid surface to figure out how to balance this, level it out. So right now, this is the high corner, and I think I want to wedge it up about that high, whatever that's going to be, and that's going to be my reference to get everything else level. This being the front, I'm going to have the short legs in front and the long legs in back. So all I need to do, use my level, raise this up until it gets to the height I want, and only put one nail in to secure it. Then it's just rinse and repeat until I get all four legs with just one nail on them in each one, holding up this base at a level height. And that takes care of that. And I only put one nail in because I want it a little bit flexible at this point. So now we're going to put the roof on. Now to make mounting the roof easy on myself, I'm going to mark out 29 inches on all the legs. And I'm going to put a clamp so it's right underneath that line so it becomes a ledge at that 29 inches. If you don't have clamps, just drive a nail partially in, and that'll give me a place to set the next pallet before I nail it all in. Now at this time, I should say that if you are in a climate colder than Texas, you know, I personally would probably go buy some of that thick pink foam, and I would stuff the bottom and the tops with that kind of foam. And you could probably do something similar to the walls. Later on, I'll show you whenever we start lining the walls how you could hide that insulation. So you could get insulation all the way around this if you wanted to. But for us in North Texas, I think this will be just fine for that dog. With that done, I can take a square, get it roughly square. This does not have to be perfect. I'm going to drive one nail. With one nail in every corner, you can take off all the clamps and then go back and put in 2 or 3 more nails everywhere. And that should make it pretty structurally sound. I'd say that's pretty okay, and it's only going to get better once we put the siding on. Now in my design, I'm going to have a flat roof that tapers. So those are going to be using the longest boards. So I want to go ahead and get that done first. And you know what? I need it to taper the other way. So I need to flip this around. Be right back. You stupid idiot. And you even did it on camera. When are you ever going to learn? Now to create the taper, I did go by 1 2x4. There is absolutely no reason you just couldn't use one of these slats, even if it had a cutout on it to do this one. I didn't save an extra piece, so I had to go spend an extra $5. The pitch of my roof is going to be determined simply from the rise over run of the 2x4, because I'm just going to cut it at diagonal. So from this point to that point in the very back, that's going to be the angle of my roof. I'm using a jigsaw to cut this just because, but if you don't have a jigsaw, a circular saw, or even a table saw or anything like that, you can just use a handsaw, no big deal. For that, just nail it down. But the key thing is, you want it to be flush with this side and that side. You don't want it to overlap them, because this is going to be the backer board that we're going to put the side panels on. I now need to cut these sides perfectly level with this, because, you know, in the beginning I wasn't doing great measurements, and I'm never going to. I'm just going to cut pieces to fit. I like using a jigsaw this because I can actually rest the blade on it. If I just watch the blade, I can keep the angle right. Just like that. You'll also want to flush up these little front nibs too. Next up, you need to decide how much wider you want the overhangs to be on your roof. I think 6 inches looks about right, because that's the length of this and it'll be easy to measure. And I have three slats that are just a little bit over that one, so it'll be nice and easy. I'll just line one side up with 6 inches, and I'll cut all the other sides later on. Now the third one is going to be in the air, because I do want a pretty good overhead out front, because that's where the porch is going to be. So now, let's start the roof. First I want to install a filler strip right here, just to close up an air gap. Got to do that on both sides. Next, if you're wanting it to be absolutely watertight, leak-proof, you might want to think about maybe putting a piece of plastic, maybe a thin piece of coroplast or something like that, one of those old road signs that politicians use, up underneath here. You don't want to overhang the outside, because it doesn't really matter if it leaks outside. You want it to look good, but something really thin that will get smashed down right here that water will just kind of flow off of would be pretty good. I am not going to be putting asphalt shingles or anything else on top of the wood, but that also is another way if you wanted to spend some money to do it. Again, this is just kind of a fair weather shelter for lava. I am just going to glue the outsides down first. That'll give them a good chance to tack up. And dimensions wise, I'm using the same exact thing. I want the extension on the back side to be the same as the side. I'm letting it hang out as far as it needs to right now out the front. Now the glue will probably take maybe 20 minutes here in Texas. Once again, I'm using Type Bond 3, which is an outdoor rated glue. And I'm only doing the gluing on the outside for the simple reason I don't want nails showing through. Every other nail you've seen me attach so far has gone into the cavity of the pallet, so nobody's ever going to see it when we're done. From there, it's just a matter of bumping up the next one to it, making sure that the back overhang is correct, and nailing it down. Though I do suggest alternating left, right, so when you get to the center, all you have to do is fit one board, the center one, and it'll be kind of balanced that way. Now here's a little trick. A lot of times if you're having to cut a thin piece, especially with something like a jigsaw, you don't really have to mark out the whole thing. Just figure out how far the distance is on your saw. Right now I'm just cutting to the outside of that little bar right there. So as long as I keep that distance, I'm going to have a fairly straight board going down. To even up this front lip, I'm just going to glue and clamp a board all the way across the front. Once again, I don't want nails to show through. That's why we're using Type On 3 waterproof glue. I'm also lining up about an inch back from the edge, just so I can clean up the front at a future date. And the caul along the top will just kind of even out all the pressure. Now, paneling the walls couldn't be simpler. We're just going to take these, cut them to length, going as high as we can go and as far down as you want to go. Because we're going to be nailing into the pallets, which are underneath and above the roof, so nails won't be exposed. So it's simply a matter of measuring and go. The sides you're going to do exactly the same, except you just have this angle right here you have to concern yourself with. A little bit more complicated, but once you set that angle, you don't really have to worry too much about it. Worst case scenario, don't even put any angles on any boards, because we're going to put a trim piece over it. Remember way earlier, every layer covers up the past mistakes? Well, if you have gaps right here, you're going to cover it up anyways. But the easiest way I've always figured out to do these kind of angles is to not stress about it. Just, you have a gap right here, just come down right there, and then draw your straight line. Saw that with a jigsaw. Easy peasy. Now, if you are like me and you were more concerned with the top angle than getting these to perfect length, there's no reason why you just couldn't draw a line, and saw line after the fact. So with the sides done, I want to turn my attention to this front porch. To accomplish that one, I'm actually going to tack a board right here. And those can serve as a temporary rest so that I can get this level with the board on front. So I can pin it then measure some front legs to support it. Then I can get up underneath and put a lot more anchors into the main thing. So now we can start trimming it out. Well, I just made the last cut, filmed my outro, and had everything all done, and then looked at it and my microphone was dead. So I don't know when it died. I'm hoping not too long ago. But if it did, basically what I did the last step was I put a new floor on it where the boards actually stretched from the front pallet to the back pallet to kind of bring everything together, and eliminated that gap. My sister, she's going to paint it, I believe. I did have some kills for her to prime it first. If you are going to paint pallet wood, I definitely suggest you get a good primer on it, because you will have noticed I did no surface prep on it. I will probably sand this section roughly just to get any big splinters off for lava so that she doesn't get hurt. But other than that, I'm leaving it as it. Call it rustic chic or whatever you want. But she might paint it. Now, for those of y'all in a Four Seasons environment, if it was me, I would go buy that cheap 1-inch white styrofoam stuff, tack it against all walls, and then put another layer of free pallet wood, maybe going horizontal this time to cover up any wind gaps or anything like that. That'll not only make it somewhat waterproof, especially if you put a good roof on it, other than just a sunshade, but you would have insulation on top, insulation on bottom, and insulation all the way around, assuming you did a front end with a door. That would be a great four-season doghouse. But hey, we're in Texas, and if it gets really, really cold, that dog will probably come in and sit by the fire. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, picked up a few tips, tricks, and that kind of stuff. It's fun kind of just sawing and hammering something together after a while. It goes really fast compared to furniture making and bowl turning. But if you're interested in that stuff, please check out the rest of my catalog. And like, favorite, subscribe, do all those social medias. It really does help. But in the end, I want you to remember that it is always worth the effort to learn new stuff, create new things, and share it with others. Y'all be safe and have fun.